My God, it's full of
The
stars.
technology, the pinnacle of technology we've achieved here in podcasting. We're podcasting on a website.
My God. Again,
Again, what?
it's full of stars. It's dope. This is incredible stuff.
Yeah, we are, listener. We are using some super secret government technology. Our CIA handlers have provided us with. This is the real George Soros infrastructure right here. It is just a website that ostensibly will record all of our shit together, and we might get through this with. This is the test. We're going to see if this causes more worry that we spent an hour talking and it all got lost, or less worry. We'll see. You'll find out.
Dun,
We record.
dun.
You decide. So, Andy, how's things? How have you? I guess good generic time of the internet. Welcome back to Political Fun Time, Happy Hour Deluxe. It's myself, Ty, and Andy today, and
Hello.
we're just gonna shoot the shit because we get caught up in sometimes doing more deep dives or bringing on guests and we started doing this whole thing because we like talking about shit with one another, and it always seems to be a fun political time and about a hour in which we are happy and have deluxe feelings.
And change.
There we go. About's doing some heavy lifting there, but we're just gonna. We haven't caught up in too long. Honestly, this is more about us than it is about you. Sorry. So, Andy, how have you been? What's new in your world other than firing up the old essay machine? And what's on your mind lately? How's things?
The essay machine is it. I had to sober up for reasons, and I'm just so fucking bored that I'm just trying to constantly talk with all the people I know about all the things that's on my mind instead of just being high and having fun. And then it's just like, I understand that this is kind of fucking boring to anybody who's not entirely on board. And I'm in a gaming server right now, so I might as well just write this down. And then it got me in the same fucking headspace where I started my channel.
Nice.
And so now I'm currently editing my 4th essay in 13 days, and I have the 5th essay already written, and the 6th is in a 3rd draft right now, and the 7th is halfway written. And I've got an essay that's scheduled for the 2nd, and an essay that's literally just already up for patrons that's going to be sometime after that. It's incredible.
Please keep all limbs inside the essay making vehicle because we are approaching terminal speeds here. God damn. I knew you were accelerating. I didn't realize it was in like 13 days. That time frame had stretched since I'd heard you mention it. That's awesome. That is that kind of productivity in February has not been my experience with winter, but good for you.
I think it's because we passed the solstice 2 months ago, and during that period I was just like curled up in a ball, like you get out of bed to make breakfast.
I lost you for a second. We passed what?
We passed the solstice 2 months ago, and so the days are getting longer, and it wasn't like, right at the beginning of January when I'd get out of bed and then I'd fucking do the thing. Make breakfast, take a piss, and then I look outside the window and the sun's already going down. Yeah, that's what it's like living at these northerly latitudes.
Yeah, you're basically living life below zero up there.
Yep, I've got my legal name change coming up on the X
no shit.
Of X month, of some month of nondescript. I've got a fuckload of appointments for all of my transition medical stuff. That's fucking dope.
Are you just now getting settled with new providers up there? How long have you been up there in the Great Northwest?
Since the end of last year.
Okay. So 3-4 months tops.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. I'm glad to hear it's all settling in.
Yeah, I am also very glad of that.
I imagine. Easy for me to say.
Yeah. And I'm hoping to get it in under the wire, get all of my the surgeries that they're going to be offering starting in the middle of this year and under the wire, so that when Trump eventually wins next year, he doesn't strip away my health care, because I already have
a wise lady there. That's
yeah.
It is just, it's easy to lose just the sheer horror of that having to be even on your fucking horizon of all the calculations and having to, file that into all the math of what is necessary, what to get done and everything. But, unfortunately, like I can only say, probably wise, because at least we're on the same page there, going, oh, there's no way that that we're gonna get, quote unquote, as lucky as Joe Biden is lucky twice.
Yeah.
It's like a lose-lose or a
I don't know.
lose-lose-lose-lose-lose.
Joe Biden's pretty fucking lucky on account of the surviving a stroke thing.
Well, I mean, yeah. No, I mean the entire, his entire career post like first term Obama is all just a sheer like defying the odds and luck, and his ability to kind of rebrand and be what he's doing now. Incredibly lucky. I'm just saying that like even if he continues to get lucky, I'm sure our luck has run out, and so if he stays in, it'll be because he takes the like. Hey, Jack, liberals and fascists like to work together anyway. Let's just hurry up the process and save us from fascism by doing liberalism with fascist terror. I'm doing Obama. I don't know why my Biden always. Listen, Jack. Yeah.
Because he sounds too old. It's like Deckard Cain almost.
Yeah. I can't quite put the papery dust voice in there enough. Or act confused. I'm going to stop. This is not an impression show. Have you been following? Okay. Did you watch his State of the Union?
No.
Because it really was you had the Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're a fucking liar, all that shit, which was like to go from, I think it was Obama's first State of the Union that, can't recall his name, whatever Republican shouted liar, and it was like a scandal, to in the middle of the State of the Union shout, stand up and shout liar. He got like censured afterwards, and meanwhile Marjorie Taylor Greene is like taking over the gavel for McCarthy when he's out for the day. And but it was, on one hand, probably almost certainly more than any other point, like in a you have to hand it to him, he was able to go from mentioning like, I mean, some people might want to cut Social Security, and then the entire Republican side shit themselves, picked their shit out of their britches, and like just started flinging it randomly in all directions. And he was able to get basically the entire Republican caucus to commit to, not targeting Social Security, which has really fucked their whole debt ceiling negotiations and all of that. Because if they can't cut entitlements, then, there's only so much woke military to pull back on. But it was very much, it seemed like a after that State of the Union, he's running again. He would have had to be laying the groundwork in there if he wasn't going to. And the way he spoke, the theme was, let's finish the job. Dubious as that construction might be, he's running again. Did you catch any of the fucking DeSantis little crime tour he's been on?
No. What is this?
It's okay because no one else did either, and that was what Trump came out. DeSantis, he was doing like he was in New York and in Chicago doing basically a look at this rampant crime, we must crack down, blah 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 blah. And Trump was making fun of him because he spoke to like the FOP in somewhere in New York, and it was like 140 people, and Trump was doing like he's well versed in the crowd size game. And totally play that again. And it's like, it's crazy seeing the next round already ramping up and having it be for the last 2 years and especially after the midterms and with special elections, everyone talking about how, the Republican Party is no longer just the party of Trump. He's losing his grip. He's losing his control. And meanwhile, DeSantis is too scared to even fucking announce that he's actually running, despite trying to do some preliminary, I'm going to go show up in other states and make an appearance and be entirely underwhelming, as we all expected. And then you have, Trump showing Biden up and making it to East Palestine.
I was about to bring the old West East Palestine up, and
it's the West Bank of East Palestine, to be clear.
Because one of the things that's really fucking me up is that they really don't understand how much climate politics is the only politics that exists anymore.
100%.
And that wokeness as part of what the right is decrying is as wokeness as part of what the right is decrying includes climate activism, right? People
Yes.
who are fighting to stop Cop City, people, Line 3 protesters, even back to the fucking Dakota Access Pipeline, like
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
all of these climate resistance have been under the blanket of wokeness as well, on top of trans rights being a woke political point, and on top of Black Lives Matter being a woke political point, right? And so, but
But I think I think even those threads you can tie pretty quickly back into that anti-wokeness as being an anti-climate bit, because all three of those threads in the end either require a drastic shift in how it's being approached, or the person who doesn't require that being comfortable with exterminationist rhetoric and language, be that on the
Yep.
climate front, on the Black Lives Matter front, or on the trans front. And I don't think that I don't think you can skate past those as just being
Yep.
tangentially related, because that literal, at least complacency, if not condoning of exterminationist rhetoric, is present in all three of those, more or less overtly.
Yeah. Every moment that I have to spend fighting for my rights as a trans person is a moment that I can't spend fighting to save the world for the
Ooh.
generations that come.
Ooh, shit. That's a great point. It's a
Yeah,
great point.
that's what I mean by them all being connected.
The efficacy of the politics of bullshit. The
Yep.
politics of, nah, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why one of the things that always seems really interesting to me is when people get all the way to anarchism, but they're not willing to say anarchism, right? They're fully intersectional, woke about the climate, socialists and everything. But they're like, no. All we need to do is put in the right government. And it's just like, who could you trust for that besides yourself?
Draw out why you see intersectionality, woke perspectives, climate, awareness, and all that as being, if not synonymous, then that closely aligned with anarchism. Because I think that's kind of a controversial assessment.
Oh, of course. Of course, it's very controversial. But the reason why I see these all being very related is because capitalism is just one intersection of oppression, right? Economics based, class based oppression, especially oppression along the market and through financial controls, right? There can be class based oppressions through other measures, like through feudal society. It was generally about land relationships and fealty over actual money being having changing hands. But when you're an anti-capitalist, a socialist, a communist, or an anarchist, you're trying to free people from that intersection of oppression. But anarchists and intersectionalists, or intersectional politics more broadly, both look at the other intersections of oppression and say, hey, these need liberation as well, right? But then the historical place that communists and socialists start thinking about the world is basically the French Revolution, or if you're really lucky, the American Revolution. But they don't go back to the English Civil War. They don't go back to see the history of how Rome's behavior and their legal system has infected the statecraft. They don't see how Rome's ideology was based off of jerking themselves raw thinking about Alexander the Great, and how Alexander the Great's ideology was jerking himself raw thinking about the Mesopotamian Queen Semiramis, right? And that goes all the way back to the Bronze Age, right? To the earliest
it always does.
We have.
It always
and so
pirates.
The non-state actors have oral histories that go back tens of thousands of years. We have a patchwork of written records that go back 10,000 years, and I think that that's that the domination of the state makes us lose our heritage. We don't have an oral tradition for this 10,000 years. We only have that patchwork of written records that they tell us that we have to just love and hold on to so strong. Otherwise, it's a dark age. But there are methods for existing outside of that, right?
Where do you place the relative? This is super interesting. This is a great thread. Where do you place the relative contemporary weight in that skewing up perspective, that inability to see the larger picture between capitalism and maybe not nationalism as we most often use it, but nationalism as a acceptance of the nation state as a fait accompli and a necessary baseline.
Nationalism, I think, sort of started to be a thing around colonialism so that they could galvanize the working class of the geographical region that was the core of the nation's territory, to be able to do violence to the colonial territories, right? And so instead of saying we're fundamentally different people, you and I am nobler than you, I am stronger and faster and smarter than you, and I'm better in every way by simple merit of my birth. Well, now me and you are the same type of people, and we should go and beat up those guys.
So in that way, it's obviously it is very, very deeply tied up in that mercantilist to capitalist transition in that phase of history. But I guess from a pulling all the way to the contemporary era and looking at what is the obstacle to people and seeing that larger bit, I think that oftentimes we kind of treat these as separate threads. And I guess maybe what I'm getting is that you really cannot separate the intellectual baggage and obfuscation that comes with the nation state as being taken as a granted and necessary element, and that being attributed as the foundation for all progress, development, and everything else, that kind of monopoly on violence, that kind of centralized authority, etc. And then the capitalist form, which needed that to build on hundreds of years ago to establish itself in its hegemonic position.
I will remind
when we
you
were
that
talking anti-capitalist attacks, it seems like you almost have to simultaneously engage with the nationalist or nation state dependent element of it. And I guess what I'm saying is it seems like you brought up both of those, and I think we lose track of one when critiquing the other the majority of the time.
Mm-hmm. I especially and I think that really helps out, the people I call red brown or red fash, right? They're one of their ideologies is national socialism or patriotic socialism, right? A still fealty to a state ultimately, right? And the idea that they thought up steam engines way the fuck back long time ago during the Roman empire, but they decided not to use it except as like a little fun party trick to make temple doors open on their own, because the make creating the burnables, whether digging them up or creating charcoal, and then making the steam was too expensive for producing work, because they had access to slaves, right? And then we see this massive agglomeration of slavery at the beginning of the African genocide in order to create these colonies, right? And then it isn't until abolitionism starts taking hold and workers start doing what are called combinations, which you would know as or syndicates, or which we would call unions nowadays, right? That they started to do steam power, right? If anybody had too much power, or if too many people were too willing to become union, they would create machines that would replace those jobs, right? And that's fossil capital. So anti-union, anti-worker activity is completely tied to this ideology, which is destroying the world, right? And that ideology is the same ideology that allowed and promulgated not just the worst institution we've known in human history, slavery, but the most horrific version of that institution known to human history, right? The main reasons why we know that slavery is as horrible as it is because of the manuals left behind about how to identify people who can't be broken and kill them, how to torture somebody until they are broken, so that they will do any labor no matter how delicate, or accept any violence no matter how severe, right?
Well, and you see that continued, I think, even in the as abolition occurred, over the larger kind of breadth of the industrialized globe, like Taylorism and that kind of making more logical the
Expand on
workplace.
Taylorism.
Taylorism was like it's like the first industrial consultant. The like, if you only move your elbow to a 36-degree angle while you move the part from machine A to machine B, you're actually saving 2% in efficiency. And it was, I want to say, like 15 to 50s to 80s. It's in that kind of mid-latter 19th century. And it was the rationalization of the industrial process to kind of further double down on that exploitation and maximizing the extraction out of human labor, even in a factory sense. And I think it is a, as with many other things, much more dressed up and, quote unquote refined. And through that, much more obfuscated, but is similar, like making a manual for the capitalist to further extract at the maximum level from the existing labor force in whatever the current constraint is. And once you have moved on from overt slavery, like non-carceral slavery, to a quote unquote free labor system, then with even with that disproportionate power and the leverage exerted by the capitalist class, once you got those people in your factory, you can further, by quote unquote rationalizing the system of production, extract more by making those men who are, laboring in a quote unquote free market arrangement to act more and more like machines. And that was kind of the precursor to like the Fordist assembly line means of production. But I think that there's a through line there. And I think that if you take, point A, slavery, break them or kill them, point B, Taylorism, and then you look at where we are now, it kind of flattens a bit of the, how much ostensible progress has been made in there, when you really just see that, like, I mean, that points even up to like the, McDonald's, raise the minimum wage and we're going to automate all the workers out of existence. And then when they finally do it and make their big automated McDonald's, there's a floor of workers, real human workers in the basement making everything happen, while the robots up top have the appearance of fulfilling those roles. But that then increases the threat of, if you realize any meaningful labor power in a collective sense, we will further do that. But like you said, the steam engine didn't come into the prominence it did until the cheaper system of just using fucking slaves was challenged. And that points back to why in Rome the technology was known but was not leveraged, because it was quote unquote too expensive. It was not efficient until you lost your ability to just churn human beings who you saw as less than human beings and established legally as such in that fucking grist mill.
Yeah, that's it. That's the tweet.
I think that was longer than a tweet. I know Elon's fucking around, but I don't know if they have a 2,400 character tweet allowance yet.
Okay, that's the tumble post. Got it.
There you
go. Yeah, but the I just think that it's really important to think about the Shinzo Abe leader, to really just meditate on that. To take the brown pill, if you will. But not the pill that makes you fash, the pill that makes it every time you orgasm a billionaire dies.
Or it's a callback to a meme that only the two of us saw, listener. But I assure you, had you seen it, this would be fucking hilarious.
It would be so good.
No, it is so good. They just don't know it. So other than the inevitable doom of us, our species, our way of life, and the inordinate and seemingly unchallengeable power of the capitalist class, segue.
Let's see what our genocidal slush fund is doing.
A part was doing that and is popping balloons. Now, Andy, tell me, you're awful clever. Could you figure out a way to pop a balloon for less than insert, whatever $8 million figure of fucking Sideliner missile costs?
I feel like
any ideas?
Just sending up a guy in a biplane with a gun.
A guy in a biplane with a fucking large tack.
Well, we wouldn't want him to get too close because it might get tangled up in his propeller, and we don't need somebody dying over a fucking balloon. Um,
Is it? Because it's just like it just like watching the whole thing unfold and seeing like the two poles on one hand, just like people, like, I mean, the weeping and gnashing of teeth and the rending of garments and going, a balloon is above us. Can you fucking believe it? How can we reach a point where a balloon is above us? And then this whole, like, okay, so it's, oh my God, there's a balloon. Oh my God, feckless weak President Joe Biden has not conquered the balloon enemy. And then it's like, oh, just kidding. There was like 5 of these while Trump was in office, and they just didn't do shit. And then it became anything larger than a half inflated, like latex you blow up with your mouth fucking balloon. We're nuking them. We're nuking them in the skies because we must appear strong. And it's like it's blown my mind because, like, of course, the whole time you're sitting there going like, okay, Joe Biden, you could, without a hyperbole, literally nuke this balloon, and like the entire Republican Party is still going to call you like soft on China. You don't have the strength to defend our fucking glorious nation and all this shit. And on the other hand, it was there was the one over Alaska that seems like it's pretty sure it was a local weather club's like $10 Party City Mylar balloon with a little GPS tag on it, and they fucking used missiles to shoot it down. And you're going like,
that's why I brought up the slush fund, right? Because it's very clear that because we don't have anywhere to send our troops to murder people and to blow up all the bombs, they're looking for ways to keep their optar, and so they're going to be producing plans that give them an excuse to blow things up.
Do you think? I mean, is your impression that this was even a deviation from just the average? That's the state of the modern globalized world, is that any number of nation states have any number of things floating over, at least like the major powers are all getting better imagery from satellites fucking anyway. Yep. And so it literally is just there was an arbitrary decision made because a political hay was being made out of the ostensible weakness of not shooting down this big fucking, air quotes ironically, threat to our airspace. Like, I mean, there's nothing beyond just a leveraging of it and making it more public because it is useful, right?
Yeah. The big thing is that I think when it's the great global potlatch, right? They're burning as much as they can, as fast as they can, and part of this is a display of martial prowess, right? And so
that's a great formation. That is, I need to stew in that for a minute. The great global potlatch. God damn, does that explain it?
Yeah. They're, jockeying for position by burning as much as they possibly can, including martial displays and entertainment displays and displays of pure destruction for destruction's ends, and, the creation of goods that are just going to be trash anyway, etc., which explains, of course, those little pop figurines, whatever the fuck they're called. Funko Pops.
Yes! I've been waiting for anything that could possibly explain them, but yeah, that's exactly it. Is a look at how much shit we can make.
And so when we and so a part of it is just like at the potlatches, bravado, right? Where you're showing how much you're capable of producing and how you disdain the actual things that are being produced, and how it's all about the process. It's all about the show. It's all about the people around you, and of embarrassing your opponents by your displays of absurd power through generosity in the case of Bill Gates, through your big meaty veiny brain like Elon Musk, who accidentally made himself the main character of fucking Twitter, and
accidentally. That seemed pretty deliberate to me.
No, he didn't understand how Twitter worked, so it was an
Well, no,
accident.
I wasn't disagreeing with that point. That part was obvious. It just seemed like he was still meant to make himself the main character, whether he achieved that in the way he set out to or not. Because that much stupidity and that much ego combined with that many resources, and it proves some points to say the
Inevitable.
least.
Yeah. And so when we can't really slow down the rate that we're burning so long as we're still playing the potlatch game, and because we're in charge, because we're winning it and running it, we have to blow up the missile as soon as people decide that it's a thing that needs to be blown up, right? And it doesn't matter that the people who would never vote for you in the fucking first place are the ones who want it blown up, because
Yes.
you're doing the potlatch show for everyone.
Okay, so let's take this further because there's a similar vein in which looking at Biden's immigration policy, and here's where I wish we had Brent around for today. He could probably cast a little more light on this, but like there was much was made about Title 42 and all the COVID restrictions and kind of the restraints on asylum, and now what is, as the COVID emergency is being declared all over, all good, no more to see here.
Downgraded from pandemic to endemic, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like all of that is so detached. What it was so detached from what was happening at the border that what is now happening, quote unquote, in response to that is like at least equally, if not more so detached. But it is a draconian border policy specifically targeted towards refugees and asylees. That is that if you pass through any other country, you're not eligible here. Very much, harkening back to Trump's Remain in Mexico policy and all that. Third country kind of first responsibility of tendering that asylum claim. And all I can see is that no matter what, Joe Biden could line up one tank every 10 feet across the entire border and just continually fire shells towards the southern border to make sure that nobody could and they would still call him, open border Joe. They would still be stating that he is destroying the country by allowing an unfettered flow of ISIS militants through the southern border, blah, 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 blah. Yet he's playing the same kind of performative hardball. How, when it is not the explicit and conspicuous consumption or expenditure of resources, how does that fit into that global potlatch thing? Because it seems like a different side of the same coin, but I don't see as neat a mechanism to connect those two things. But it does seem like it is, if not identical, then damn near it in the motivation and the impetus that is driving Joe Biden's policy in that direction.
Dawn of Everything is my main source for really thinking about the potlatches, followed by Death the First 5,000 Years. My boy Dave.
Wait, are you saying that on this podcast, Graeber is being referenced? Because this is fucking out of hand.
Because it's time to take a shot, baby. Yes.
We really need a grape grab or a grape bag theme song.
A grape bag.
It's our weekly grape bag. See what I did there?
Yes. You've heard of no shit. Where was I? Okay, so with the potlatches,
there's the potlatch theory and how that applies here. That's what I'm curious about, because that's not as obvious to me as it is with the military expenditures. It's a literally like big blow up fire. Look at how impressive our display was. And here it is just we are being overtly cruel and to a degree that contradicts even America's previously stated fucking ideals. And that is essentially by the fucking liberal savior after the clown fascism of Trump. Yet it is it's not a passing thing. It's a very deliberate choice they've made to be that egregious in their policy there. So tie that into the potlatch kind of conception.
So in Dawn of Everything, they describe the great quackie-oodle potlatches in some detail. And the thing that these potlatches are not cannot exist without is slavery, right? Because if you're trying to make things that are just going to get burned, somebody's going to be like, well, this is just going to go on the fire anyway, so what if I save time by not making it? And so eventually you need people who you can compel to do labor, and slavery doesn't exist without cruelty. The cruelty is baked in.
My understanding of those potlatches is though it was. I mean, not just that it wasn't explicitly, but like, I mean, the quote unquote slavery component was no more overt than any centralized authority. That it was more about the king or the central authority figure's ability to command control over those resources, however they were made. Did I just miss that element? Because I don't remember David or I don't remember Grabgrow making that an explicitly slavery bound constraint, or is that just a in that kind of paradigm? Obviously, if you have slaves, you can do even more of a potlatch display.
Yeah, in debt. The first source I ever said on this potlatch or on this podcast about potlatch, the the he doesn't really talk about the slavery angle or what the slavery angle really means, right? But the fact is that the people vying what they were vying for in these squawky potlatches was positions of nobility at certain ceremonial junctures, right? And so
Based on the prestige of the expenditure that then validates those noble positionings and
in,
that disproportional power.
yeah, and so with the food is so massively abundant because of land management practices, right? That they don't really need to do a lot of work to actually keep everybody fed. And so what the nobles would do is they just go up and down the coast looking for people to enslave to increase the amount of things they could produce. So everybody who's in their in their group who's free does some amount of work to make it happen, but the single noble person, noble always being a double entendre between somebody who has a certain level of nobility and somebody who does the things that nobles have historically done, comma, Gilles de Rais shit, which is one of the earliest serial killers on record,
Oh, okay.
who is also a noble. The da
Makes
in
sense.
somebody's name implies that they're from a noble lineage or currently landed. Anyway, same with Vaughns and Vans and I guess days and days as well, and days.
And dues.
Oh yes, does. Yes.
Duh.
Anyway, so
You and your fancy French soft use. Duh. Dues. In America, we say do.
yes, because they're shit people. Anyway, slave taking is the traditional noble pastime because what's more noble than not having to work a day in your life because somebody else is forced to labor for you.
Pretty fucking noble.
Yeah. Anyway,
So the border thing and how that is
along with
is
the
it?
pandemic thing, yes.
Yeah.
So we all know that immigrants, when they come here, they have a certain level of forced labor, right? It doesn't matter who they're working for generally, unless they have a B2, but they have to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're already wealthy and they're coming here to become part of our ruling class, and they pay money to basically get their citizenship fast
Yeah.
tracked, right?
Yeah.
I think the going rate was $10,000 for that kind of visa.
If
So
you're super fucking white.
yes, the otherwise it's that is your front fee plus immigration lawyers to make it happen.
Plus
Um,
10 years, plus, yada, yada,
yeah.
yada.
The well, to be fair, America really doesn't care where the investment comes from. They just want your money. Uh, yeah, the more people gambling, the bigger
True.
the bigger it works.
True.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's all it's all part of this system which is compelling labor while being difficult to like trying to make itself in a very liberal way difficult to explain why it's fucking evil, right? um they spend years figuring out how to shape these policies in order to laser focus what they want to happen. And occasionally something happens that's outside of the ordinary, or a hole exists where somebody can survive through it or escape through it. But oftentimes they rectify it, right? Where they passed the Union Relations Act in the 1930s, to completely neuter the IWW, and then they passed Taft-Hartley later to neuter the rest of them, and then Reagan cut it off, right? Starting with the air traffic controllers, and completely gutted federal unionship, right? And so what's happening is this iterative process where they're trying to tighten the controls in a way that makes it super difficult to figure out where the systemic controls are placed. And that's one of the reasons why, the right, when they discovered that CRT existed, got really fucking scared and pissy. So, you know.
So I think that, especially when you come to how all of that plays towards the Reagan era, is there, and I'm just reaching now because I'm just like, back to our, like I said, we're back to our roots of me going, Andy, explain things to me. Is because, notably Reagan was not only left of the current Republican Party by a few miles, but largely left of the Democratic Party on immigration. And, Reagan and his amnesty is something that is inconceivable anywhere from, HW and beyond, largely. Does that fit in there anywhere? Is there a degree to which, when you have
I've already formulated an answer.
Okay, maybe see if I'm even asking the right question then. Like, when you have that kind of overt and punitive, if you need it, control over the labor supply with all of those developments, is it that creates more room on the immigration front? And then tangentially, does that mean that Biden's draconian immigration policy is in some way reflective on the back end of the strength of American labor relative to anything in the last fucking 30 years? Or is it just those two things have been so deeply ingrained that it's unrelated, but we just have a very well-worn path of fuck these people who want to come here?
Naomi Klein has a thesis called Barricadia that I will not be going into here.
Go read Naomi Klein. Do yourself a favor.
Shock doctrine is very useful in all cases. From the person who invented conversion therapy, his version of conversion therapy, by the way, his name was Robert Galbraith, which was one of J.K. Rowling's pen names.
Yes, it was.
And his version of conversion therapy wasn't.
Do you think that was an accident, by the way? Do you think that of all the names she could have chosen as a pen name, that was just a happenstance? Because some people fucking act like it was, and I think that, like, no, I don't think you choose the fucking father of conversion therapy unless you fucking meant to and wanted to make a point.
Yes, that is exactly how dog whistles work. Yes. It wasn't praying away the gay. It was electroshock therapy, electroconvulsive therapy. They shock the shit out of your brain to try to make you less gay.
Shock away the gay, shock away the inability to hold a job, shock away the mood, shock away the feelings. It was, it's a time-honored tradition in, our modern Western civilization of going, we don't like you. We're going to shock you till you're dead, or we like you. And that's some dark shit.
And just be happy that we're not putting an ice pick through your orbital socket, huh?
Yeah, I that really is the hey, we could fucking kill you, and you're going like, not that it's a strong argument, but still compelling because I don't like getting killed.
Yeah, you're gonna really like my next two essays.
Well, I could have told you that already, but
but yeah, so it is that. Starting with the civil rights uprising in the 1960s, right, where black people were just absolutely fucking done with it, and they just wanted to be treated like people. They wanted to feel like, I don't know, say that Black Lives Matter.
The fucking audacity.
right? They realized that they can't, especially when white kids started participating and helping out, they realized that they can't just
Mm.
continue the same pattern of horrible brutality, right? Because, you know, taking your kids to a picnic to watch a lynching was falling out of vogue because when those kids were growing up, they were like, hey, I'm not going to live around here. I'm going to go somewhere the fuck else because this place fucking blows. All of you people fucking suck shit. And so they started to be very, very present and very thoughtful about how much violence people are willing to put up with, right? And how much misinformation and how slow the project of iterating can be, right? And so, you know, this is why
Mm.
critical legal theory is so important to have like a basis of the ability to read not the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, being able to read the intent of the laws, right?
Or at least the effect of the law.
Yeah.
And regardless of spirit, intent, whatever, say here's the actual implication rather than what was said to get it passed.
Yeah. And so when you get like, you know, this device is known to contain chemicals to California cancer.
Yeah.
um,
That sign on
uh,
literally every building and every shop you ever enter into. Yeah.
Everything that you can put in your mouth in the state of
Mm-hmm.
California has that sign on it, right? And that is because and it's funny and it's a silly little joke, but the actual fact is that companies who put things that are not just 1 in 100,000 cancerous, but 1 in 10,000, 1 in 5,000, 1 in 2 fucking 100, right? They put those in their stuff, and those companies lobbied to get a worse version of the law on, right? In order to just make it a useless fucking law that
Yeah.
just wastes everybody's fucking time and mental capacity. And so it's that kind of thing where good things don't happen and bad things happen so slowly that it's really hard to get angry enough about it because, well, we survived the last one, whatever, right? And it's not for black people, it's not for, you know, native people, it's not for immigrants detained at the border, it's so that white people don't help out, right? It's the Rhodesia strategy of kicking the can down the road to
Oh.
for long enough that maybe we can eke out some kind of win, right? And really, what it
Yeah.
was that the Rhodesian ruling class kicked the can down the road until they could get the fuck out, leaving the their white middle managers stuck behind, right?
But had they not gotten the fuck out, the same strategy would have been applicable in the sense that it is to delay into the point that you've done enough damage to your opposition by just attrition and all of these kind of harms that have been subsumed into the larger structure and normalized and made okay in that way, that you would either diminish the opposition for long enough for you to safely extricate yourself, or the same line of thinking would apply if you had planned to stay and you were just trying to quietly exterminate anybody who would challenge that position of power without bringing to the fore those confrontations, without making explicit that agenda, in the same way that, you know, you can just diminish the differential environmental harms done to different groups based on existing economic structures and the legacy of this and yada yada yada. But if you slap a fucking prop 5 or whatever it is, whatever the prop was, like, oh well, every store you go into has cancer causing things, so don't pay attention to the cancer alleys or the cancer barrios or anything like that. It's a similar thing, even though in that case it was just as effective for, we don't give a fuck about the long term, we're covering our ass until we're safe.
They, we the next few essays that I'm going to be doing are going to be talking kind of about this, that the ruling class is trying to, at this point, in order to pretend like they're in control, is how I'm going to say this. They're trying to dominate the destructive, or like pretend like they are the destructive forces of the universe, and so they are ramping up our media in order to make genocide look like an option, so that they can kill people in advance of the oncoming climate chaos so that people feel like they're in charge of the killing instead of victims of this long-term, incredibly violent strategy called capitalism, right?
Well, and that is so neatly and easily synthesized into that kind of potlatch display that conspicuous consumption, conspicuous destruction, conspicuous expenditure of resources, that then when you start using that kind of genocidal or anti-human rhetoric, it is symbol. I think that you're taking advantage of those underlying mechanisms of psychology to similarly draw on that display of look at how in control we are. And rather than having to explicitly say, we're in such control, you must accept it, and our control is going to be used towards the extermination or the diminution or diminishment of these groups by whatever lines you want to draw, if you're already in that potlatch display paradigm, then yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I had not identified that as a if you are pushed into a corner where you say, sorry, our only option is to kill all these motherfuckers, then you look weak, out of control, and then you're on the hook for all of the evil of killing these motherfuckers. If you act like you're in control and you make the conspicuous displays to show how much control you exert over the natural world and your economy and et cetera, then by doing that, you're just giving a fucking TED talk. This is just your thought leader. You're just a visionary who sees in the necessary sacrifices of the future. And you can, I think that with the common knowledge and understanding of how genocide and how this kind of operation has worked in the past, that kind of short circuits it if you preempt it. Yep. And that is fucking terrifying.
Yeah. It's important to know that in this conversation that the death cult, the death pact, depending on which part of it that you want to describe, right? They literally, like fascists, literally don't give a fuck about any life but their own, and are fine with just letting it all go to fucking shit, or even expending the lives of their allies, because that's the agreement they're making. That's why I call it the death pact, right? But they it doesn't matter if it's queers, Jews, travelers, people of any non-dominant religious strain, mentally unwell people,
as long as there's a distinction to be made between you and them, you are okay with them being on the chopping block because it is not you. And even ever increasingly small orders of magnitude in that distinction are acceptable because A, that's a limited supply and it's going to march towards you, but B, as long as it isn't actually exactly you, the ideology isn't necessarily challenged. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, it's very much it's us or them until very suddenly them includes me. The Nemolar hours, I call it, right? Stand with us or you'll be standing alone. Yeah. Damn. It's been about an hour. You want to fucking hit it?
Maybe. Are you down to tag on? I was thinking maybe for like a little extra segment, you've got a couple of little teasers of your essays. Maybe we could, now that it's been out for a bit, you could give us a synopsis of the Bear essay, and maybe we could talk just a little bit about that, because I found that really compelling, and I was thinking maybe you could give a quick synopsis here so that anyone who does listen here who hasn't actually checked that out yet can be inspired to do so. And maybe just, get an extra, 15, 20 out of it, kind of talking that through a little bit. Cause I think that for all the great content in there, it was, it answered a lot, but it opened even more. And I found that impressive and very challenging. What?
So anarchism, baby. So the main part of my ideology of anarchism is that, everybody has to understand that we are making decisions even when we feel like we're not making a decision, right? Howard Zinn's, you can't stay neutral on a moving train. And so
I didn't realize that. Does that originate with Zinn?
Yeah, that's his metaphor.
I never knew that came from him specifically. That's awesome.
Yeah, for a long time I thought it was poet laureate Serge Tankian. So, uh, uh, yeah. So in this essay, I basically got this like eureka moment where I'm like, there's something that all of these. So, um, I talked about this before. Was it on stream? Where these uh where this woman is taking a video of herself doing exercises, and in the background she notices
Oh
this
yeah, yeah,
dude
yeah.
staring at her, right?
Oh no, different video.
And so all of these dudes who are commenting on this TikTok video where she's being like cutting the tension and being funny about this dude who's very obviously staring, right? They get really pissed off and like circle the wagons and it doesn't matter how like if they're full on manosphere, if they're debate bros, if they're the commentariat. The only person who I saw who had even a halfway decent take was Hassan Piker. Credit to Hassan Piker. But everybody else seemed to circle the like he was the only one who's like, yeah, he's very clearly staring. Like if he was offering to help, he should have come over and offered help and then left it at that. If he wanted to know when she was done, he should have come over and asked when she was done and left it at that. By continuing to look over like that, he's very obviously staring. That's the tell. Right?
Wait, did she ostensibly need help, or was that just
he came over and tried to offer help because she was doing the fun little performative cursing about an inconvenience, and he came out of nowhere to offer help, right? And that isn't necessarily bad on its own, right? But he didn't offer help. He started to help without even asking.
Oh,
right. So the and then she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, I'm putting this on. It looked like you're struggling." And she's like, well, you have to talk with me and ask first so you can find out if I even want help, because I'm doing this for myself.
Imagine that not being clear to you.
Right? It's just such a basic part of the fucking social contract that we're currently
and it gets made into this gendered thing, and it'd say like, I don't, if it was another dude, I'm sure you would have asked first. Yeah. B, even if that didn't appear to you as obvious and it was another dude and you went up and did that, so much. I caught just bits and pieces of the rhetoric around some of these kind of the gym TikToks and dudes staring, and I didn't know about that one specifically, but like that is just, it's just a for all the fucking like,
but
chauvinist sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it went hyper viral, and so I saw people talking about this in like 3 or 4 places, and then I caught I think it was a Mooncat stream where she's looking at a bunch of these videos, and all of the videos that people are sending her about, like, how the right wing coordinates behind the scenes, right? For absolute sure, because they're always putting out topics on the same concepts, even
100%.
Even when it's too far in advance. And also we've like Milo Yiannopoulos repeatedly released leaks, like the Richard Spencer meltdown was a Milo Yiannopoulos leak. He released stuff on Bannon, Steve Bannon, about how he very much does coordinate behind the scenes to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And that they have the news stories in advance and stuff. And so this thing went hyper viral because the right wing like got their claws into it. But then other people who aren't necessarily themselves part of this core manosphere right wing, like crypto fash group, right, also picked it up with the same shit. And they're picking it up because they have this sort of like absolutely fragile masculinity, let's be honest, right? And they're so afraid of not acting right that they constantly have to like revert to this legalese that like when you're acting right, you don't have to talk like that. You don't need people to know exactly what went on, right? And if somebody holds you to
if
account,
you're not wrong, you usually don't have to start with, well, technically.
Yeah. Like he's not even doing the thing that she said. Well, it very much looks like he is doing the thing, right? Like that kind of thing, right? So it's very much trying to convince an audience of younger men, because I already know a lot of these guys have, a 13 to 20-ish, age group, right? Demographic. And it's trying to convince this audience of younger men to let them be a little bit shitty to women, right? because they feel like they wouldn't be really shitty to women, but they, they don't want anybody to point out when they're being a little shitty, right?
Well, and if you're allowed to be a little shitty, then it obfuscate. It's like if you're trying to justify that, well, I'm not that shitty, but you don't want to actually wrestle or engage with any of the privilege you have or any of the lowered standard by which you're being judged, then you want to maintain being able to be a little bit shitty because, hey, at least you're not being a lot shitty. And it's just the most chicken shit middle ground, but so fucking pervasive.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I find really interesting is that, like, the more you go into leftist spaces, the more you get into this sort of, dang it, now that I know what ontology is and I can use it in a sentence, I want to use it, but I hate using it because it's a fucking $25 word and I don't like it. But,
that's one of those, the more I thought I knew about like what it meant and how to use it, the more I realized like I probably shouldn't because I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. And I've gotten to the point where now I'm just like, I'll read about it. I won't say the fucking word because I'm scared and I'm not that confident in my understanding.
Yeah, I just had to read
so stupidly so many times, and it's just one of those like that's like a whole era of anthropological literature is like, well, the ontology of, and it's like, I don't think that word means what you think it means.
The you keep using that word. It's a philosophically distinct way to approach reality, is what an ontology is. Right?
And don't get me wrong, super fucking useful, super generative, incredibly expansive, just as with any other word that fits that category, over leveraged, overused, and but we should not let the misuse diminish the positive use. So continue on. Sorry, I have a slight here on ontology, and I'm like, I'm like, I gotta pretend like I know what the hell that is.
Yeah, and so they have this like sort of like first principles approach to, like, leftists have this first principles approach to doing the right thing, which is that you always do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Like, yeah, sure, you get a little bit satisfied from doing it, but like sometimes you don't. Sometimes life sucks for you specifically because you did the right thing, right? Sometimes you have to look at people who are getting away with not doing the right thing and not being punished at all for it, not being whatever, and just like
take your satisfaction not from the actual result, but from understanding that in the aggregate and the really really zooming out there and just kind of willing yourself to understand the value even if you don't experience it directly.
You think we think that being a good person is in some way real, right? So we have this ontology in which we think that you can become a good person through your actions, right? And so when we
become or perform as, even if it isn't becoming as a fixed state, it is existing as in any given moment.
Yeah,
but equally real through an ontological lens.
Yeah, we have this Joker idea of in our society where you are the hero, or you die a hero, or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? And that's literally part of that thing that I've been saying of the ruling class preparing us for genocide, because our entire lives we've been exposed to these stories about how heroes never fucking kill people, right? And then as things get worse, people are going to start having to do, or thinking that they have to do violence, right? In order to protect themselves, and they'll
even if it isn't directly
call themselves villains, right?
Well, and if it isn't directly, you have this like, well, you recast what a hero and what a villain is, and if it's villainous in one sense, it is it is heroic that my family continues to eat. It is heroic that I have taken this from someone else. I am a protector. Yeah, well, and there's a reason that is so deeply, even when it wasn't the height of the more militant kind of Christo-fascist rhetoric on the right, that was a deep root that you see being raised more and more, and being back to what you're saying a minute ago, preemptively established before it becomes necessary as a justification for, and it is acceptable because that is it's the perfect complement to the ultimately individualized and atomized neoliberal subject that there is no society, only people and families, the Tina Margaret Thatcher bullshit. Like, that speaks so strongly to that, And it is, for as dark as it was when it was said, the more we look back and see the impact of that thread of thought and how that plays out, and then looking at the current moment and the heightening stakes and what is being preemptively addressed and justified, that feeds so well into that it is a, like, man, nobody before, when did fucking Thatcher say that? That was like 88, right? 89 maybe? It was,
Yeah, it was pretty early.
it was over 30 years ago, and it was one of those, like, at no point before 2 years ago was it clear how fucking dark that formulation would come to be, because I'm as vulnerable to that as anybody. When things break down, when it is literally a, like, who was in these four walls and how desperate are things and what do you have to do? It is it is easier to devolve into a situation that seems to justify the necessity of that atomization than it is to maintain any hope of being able to move above and beyond that. And that's before you consider the system we fucking live under that basically makes it impossible not to reinforce that through what is necessary for you to do your own just self and familial reproduction and all the above. I've taken it 4 steps off of what you were getting at. I don't know what I was trying to tie into, but I'm just going to pull the fucking ripcord and say, you go back to what you were saying, because I'm not sure how that was relevant, actually.
So let's just
I love it. I can count on you, Andy.
Yeah, the thing that happens is that, like, people like Jordan Peterson, people like Joe Rogan, people like fucking Penguin Zero and Andrew Tate are all in this conversation about what it means to be a man. Like, one of the big Jordan Peterson quotes that's coming around a lot on my feed is the one where he goes, oh, you have to make yourself a monster and then tame that beast, or something to that effect, right? Where instead of saying that, you have to understand how violence affects your communities, and be willing to hold yourself accountable so that you aren't levying that violence yourself, and protect your family, right, from others who would be willing to use that violence. You're saying the same thing, but one of them is, like, playing into that live long enough to see yourself become the villain idea, right? And so, we're getting this discourse from men about what men are supposed to be. And in excluding women from this discourse, or excluding women from this discourse who disagree with men on fundamental issues, right? They might disagree on certain surface level issues, like, women still need access to abortion, or women still need access to divorce, but, like, the actual fundamentals of this gender divide as we have it in society, right, where men get to decide what it means to be a man and men get to decide what it means to be a woman. Well, women also decide, you can't help but giving women a say in what it means to be a woman, right? Because
you can deny it, but it will still exist for women. You can deny it publicly and in a common sense, but it is within that paradigm, within that, kind of two perspective looking back and forth. You can't actually deny it because it will exist.
Yeah. So, women care what it means to be a man, because especially heterosexual women like men, right? And there's this, like, heterofatalism thing where women who are attracted to men feel depressed because they can't find they just don't see any men who they can imagine having a happy life with, because they've seen all of these relationships play out. They've seen it with their all of the women in their life, right? And no matter how nice the guy is, like, you still don't know if he's going to beat the shit out of you once you get pregnant, right? You don't know if he's going to fucking choke the life out of you once you've had his first kid, right? And so they just, because of this, like, fucking crypto misogynist element where men are trying to pretend like they're better than the evil piece of shit in their head, they want to be able to say, hey, listen, like please don't act that way. I just, I need a partner. I don't need a protector, right? And men are like, Krug have club, Krug do kill, protect.
And fucking Krug been told, protector is value. And there is a, it does not, it is not exculpatory in any situation.
The trash goblin.
But that's been the thing that's been told, is the, like, that's what's been the value, that is what is the, like, pitched as you can be a dumb, emotionally unintelligent piece of shit, but provide for family, bring home the bigger meat. You know, like it just absolute like
You're supposed to
nonsense
be
that was.
hunting the mammoth.
Well, it's like shit that was inaccurate in the Stone Age. You know, it's one of those that's the Stone Age ideal that is not the actual Stone Age.
Yes.
Reality. It's like all of the above. And I think maybe you hit on a at least a maybe not perfect, but a pretty the best bow we're gonna come on to tie it up. And you had referenced men pretending not to be this monster they hold in their head that they know they need to avoid. And maybe it is just as simple as like, okay, instead of pretending not to be that, don't
Be
be
that.
that.
Right?
And it's a lot fucking harder, but also infinitely more meaningful because that pretense means jack shit as soon as it fails. And by nature of being a pretense, it is something that is not committed to except for its convenience. And
I Absolutely. I want to drop in some more director's commentary because we got 3 minutes and I'm just going to speed run this.
do
Now,
it.
the second reason why women want to be involved is we've already discussed it. Men who don't care what women have to say about being a man are almost without exception absolute jackasses to women. And the third reason why is because
Surprise.
is that it benefits bad men to have men be this this completely unself-conscious dickhead, right? But it also doesn't make most men happy. In fact, it precludes them from having any
It's
kind of
intensely
relationship.
self-destructive. It is intensely self-destructive.
And so women want to talk to you about the kind of person you're trying to be because they want you to be happy, right? Like the women in your life want you to be happy ultimately. And there are people who don't really care if you're happy individually, but like as a whole, people care about people mostly. And the only reason we don't is because we're convinced to not. We're convinced that it doesn't matter anymore. Right?
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe just as a closing thought, like just to drop the veil a little bit. I'm in a boring heterosexual traditional marriage,
You're
and
a het? A het?
surprise. No, like one of the things, like when my wife and I we met through like OK Cupid, met online,
Christian
and
Mingle,
we
yeah.
hit. Yeah, exactly. Plenty of fish brought us together, like the Lord intended. But no, we met at a point where we were both very like over relationships. We were both very conveniently at the same time when we met had overlapped in this like, I am not performing shit for anybody. Here's what I am. Here's who I am. Here's where I am. Here's where I am now. Here's where I hope to be. And there was it was just a miracle of completely like stepping outside of so much of the typical dating paradigm and everything. But what it came down to is like I'll tell you, as a I'm a 6'2" bearded het dude. Like, I check a lot of stereotypical boxes in some ways. And, for most of my, especially adolescence in a very conservative, framework, like had a lot of insecurity around gender roles and performance and everything. But my wife and I are, partners. Like, we're pretty much like one of those, like she'll call me husband, I'll call her wife, but usually refer to each other as partners and everything. But like, I have pulled in the lion's share of the income at sometimes, but I got to go to school because she was, a willing sugar mama, and it just took good care of me. And I played housewife, and there's so much of this shit. And I guess what I'm trying to underline is how much of all the what is, whether it is essence or symptom of so much of that problematic stuff, is where because it is being, even in traditional heterosexual dynamics, unnecessarily gendered, and the baggage from both directions does no favors either to the party it is attached to or to the partner who they are interacting with and building with. And to the degree that there are typical or traditional gender dynamics, like these are things that are useful to inform those relationships. But I'm 10 years into this relationship, and I don't think that there is really anything that is meaningful that intersects more with my maleness or my masculinity or my wife's femaleness or her femininity than with our humanity. And the narratives being sold, especially in these men's spaces and especially in the most egregious and overtly harmful elements, are, let's be clear, and if everything else gets lost, this is what I do not want to minimize, are more dangerous to women, females, femme presenting, anything along those lines, because everything in the entire weight of all the social structures we live within make that a more risky and dangerous position. And so I'm sorry, when it comes to a lot of this, be it men's rights or Andrew Tate, Top G bullshit, like if in that traditional sphere you're a man and you're bitching, like my sympathy is limited, because if you think you have it rough, I have news for you. However, looking at the rise of this discourse and the crazy shit I've seen online around this, especially over the last few months, like here on the left, like we cannot allow ourselves to fail to offer not just answers, but like a better alternative. And this is where,
it's all
admittedly,
decision making.
It's all decision making,
and they're trying to erase the decisions. That's the fact.
And I want to be clear. I'm a cisgendered heterosexual male, white male. When it comes to making decisions, like, I don't want to act like it's as easy for everyone as it is for me to operate and shift between these roles, to select between these roles, to move between these spheres and all of that. But at the same time, like, that humanistic ideal that I think is one of the least restrictive and most all-encompassing. There's some baggage to the term, I realize, but like for the most part, like I think that our broader egalitarian ideals, our broader universalist ideals, and our understanding of the consistent capacity between all humans, regardless of, back to the intersectionality thing, pick the intersection, regardless of any one of those, there's enough depth there, and enough that, I don't think the average has reached, what we're far from tapping out just the humanistic ideals. Taking away a bunch of this gendered bullshit, like, that could be an element of freedom, of expression, of expansion of these ideals of freedom, expression, and realizing potential. And yet the vast majority of what we're dealing with is all in just even if it isn't seen as such or meant as such or deliberately connected as such, the legacy of the oppressive structures that those divisions have been used to enable and to perpetuate. And we're stuck fighting on this fucking battleground that is all mired in all that. And I'm going, but that's the problem. So, fuck your positive femininity or fuck positive masculinity. Like, we need to first, like, be free of the negative elements of those constraints, and then move on to finding these positive expressions of it. But as long as we are not at least aware of that those dual layers of interaction, we can't, we're still, one hand behind our back fighting against the bullshit rather than the potential. Please go. I want to hear what you have to say, Andy.
It was something that you basically just touched on, is something that, like, the channel Sean that I constantly plug in my videos, and
that's
then
AWN just Sean lowercase, right?
Yeah,
I'm familiar. Okay, yeah.
He in his video about Andrew Tate very recently, he talked about examples of positive masculinity, and almost everybody gave an example of a fictional character who would be an example of positive masculinity. And this very much goes into what Ursula K. Le Guin said, that
it's so sad and true,
that lords in fiction are true lords, unlike any lords that have ever existed in the real world, because they don't exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you just did and what Sean did in his video was point to a type of masculinity in which you feel masculine on the inside and you do the things that you want to do and you never hold anyone else to your standards. You have made a choice about how to live your life and you are acting on that choice and you don't give a fuck about what anyone else does, right? And like my role models when I was still pretending to be a dude were the Vlogbrothers, and what John Green always said isn't don't just be yourself, make yours a good self.
Ooh. Well,
Right?
and I would like to tag one thing on there. I don't know, as you know, challenge addendum, take it as you will. Like, I think there's a step beyond separating your own experience and understanding and not holding that over or against anybody else's. I think even that is unnecessarily bounded and impoverished by the framework we're all kind of fighting against here, because I think that if we're talking of, you know, ideals and what could be, I think that it is A, yes, exactly that, but B, that you allow yourself to both appreciate and be challenged by how that is expressed and experienced and understood by others, because otherwise you're robbing yourself. And I think that you come to a better understanding of your own experience by understanding, even if it is different and if it is outside of how you are capable of experiencing your own relation there to how others do. It is
It's
yours is
robbing
more
Peter to
meaningful
pay
if you,
Paul, right?
yeah. Whereas if you understand even yours as somewhat either contingent or subjective or unique in ways that do not detract from the validity of others, even if you cannot objectively experience or understand them, it's like again, it's like, you know, it's not robbing Peter to pay Paul, it's robbing yourself to rob Peter to rob. It's losing all fucking around, and yet you are the
A
most
world friend
impoverished,
of
you are the
burglary.
biggest victim of your own bullshit in almost all of those cases. And I think that, I don't know, the more that this discourse has popped up, and I think, yeah, we do need to wrap up, but like, and this is going to be a topic we need to maybe allow just a whole rambling episode for, with maybe some broader voices too. Like, it is one thing that I think that maybe might be fruitful in going, that like, on a completely selfish and self-centered level, like, for all this bullshit and everyone looking for, you know, desperate enough to resort to fucking Andrew Tate as a role model. Like, I get, you know, on one hand it's easy to mock, on the other hand it's say, well, look around, like, what the fuck else is on offer? But you, no matter what angle you interact with that from,
Yeah,
falling prey to,
very much Sean points out that the left and the right are not offering the same things, right? And so when you're looking for a traditionally masculine role to follow, when you're shopping around from that, the left isn't offering any of those things, because the left has identified that there are very few traditionally masculine roles that aren't broadly shitty to women, right?
see, even there though, I think that the traditional quote unquote there is being bound by what modernity and postmodernity will, you know, or
Absolutely.
really.
That's so good.
And so if we take traditional and say, but what about, you know, what if we go further than 2 to 4 to 6 to 8,000 years ago and say, what have these fucking Homo sapien monkeys been up to for the other 200,000 years? There is such a fucking kaleidoscopic and mind-blowing range of shit. You know, we kind of got into this when we had Sophie on a little bit about the kind of like, human nature, human tendencies, what's even useful to use relating to that. There's such a fucking wide variety available that, like you said, it's decision making. There is nothing that can even be said uniformly and accurately to be traditional or natural or anything there. Anything that invokes that is a bullshit fucking excuse. We choose it, and if it is bad, it is because we have chosen it. And if it continues to be shitty, it's because we have continued to choose that, and we don't get off the fucking hook at any point along that line. Andy, bring it home, and we got to get the fuck out of here.
We're making masculinity, and we could choose to make masculinity different.
What if it was like good? That doesn't even seem that hard. Come the fuck on.
You can find me on Tumblr at oh god, what is my Tumblr? What even is Tumblr? At pamphleteer, pamphlet tyr, one word. You can find me on Twitter at pamphlet_tier, and you can find me on YouTube, which is my main place. The word pamphleteer, like the real word, not spelled funny.
That's an important distinction, because
there are
after all this
so
time, that still
many-
fucks me up. Check out her latest video. What's
And
the
there are
title?
so many come
With
out.
Bear in it.
Bear, Politics, Men, and Love.
That is so generative, so thought-provoking, so both informative on its own, but it was one of those that I was like, I want to watch it again, but like I want to give that a week, because like I have all the other thoughts that I forgot I had put on like the back burner. I had not interrogated. Really, really good stuff, and it makes me so excited for the new ones to come out. And if you're listening to this show but not on the Pamphleteer channel, like A, I gotta imagine you're in a minority, and B, bad. Very bad. Go check them out. Well worth your time, and I'm excited to chase them down more in the future.
Yeah. The next episode is called Control and the Cold Calculus of Violence, Pipe the Gravity of Leisure on the 2nd of May. And then after that will be Big Iron and the Realities of the Gun.
The 2nd of May or March?
March, thank you. And that one's also already up and scheduled, but that'll come out 2 weeks
later. If you were a patron,
after that.
You'd already know.
Yeah, you'd already be able to see it. Yeah.
Just saying.
For $1 or more than $1.
Andy, always good to catch up with you. I'm glad we made it happen
Always.
today. Even sans our beloved Brent, but he's doing important things.
Thanks.
And everyone send him some good vibes for his fight against the carceral state. We love him. He's got to do it.
He's so dope.
Until next time.
Cool. Bye.
Goodbye, y'all.
Political fun time, happy hour looks.